This image is well composed and in focus, with adequate nose space in front of the bird. The bronze-wing pigeon has striking colours, and the light and exposure is low, not doing justice to the colour display of the project. In my opinion, the subject of this image is the walkway centred in the centre of the photograph. The visitors are turned towards the walkway, leading the eye of the beholder. However, the image is well focused on the lateral activities of visitors that distract from the subject. Images of people taken from behind can be powerfully emotive and tell stories. This image may be further improved by only including humans walking down the walkway and taken from behind. The photographer recognises the beauty of nature reflected in water. The image is also well taken with the sunlight at low angle, enriching colour. The water edge is tilted down to the right, and the reflections are slightly blurred from fine ripples in the water. In my opinion, the above water panorama can be slightly overexposed. Correcting the water horizon and waiting for the water ripples to settle may improve the image. The subject of the image is well-composed landscape that includes rocks, water and sky. The horizon is centred and angled slightly down to the right. The sunlight on the water at the left is overexposed and attracts the eye. This distraction may be toned down using a photographic software program. This image could possibly be improved by restoring the rule of thirds and either cropping half the sky down to the top of the hill on the right or cropping the foreground up to top of the algae-covered rocks in the middle. A well-balanced image that combines the autumn colours on the hillside with dark weather. The ruffled water surface in the foreground and storm clouds in the background create a sombre mood. Nicely focused. However, more exposure on the left hillside would increase the panorama. This is a good example of a landscape that photographers will visit at different times to explore different lightings, that is, early morning, late afternoon. Well spotted, Bellandina in full bloom. The focus is soft and results in the flowers and red fruit blending with the blurred background. A sharper focus may show more fine detail and increase the impact. The insect is well captured, holding onto the branch, and the blue colour stands out against the dark background. The focus on the head of the insect is soft, and higher definition of the eye will improve the impact. The subject is the insect, and using a software program to dull the white colour of the stalk will remove distraction. Well-composed image of the emus in their natural environment. The foreground and background emphasize how the subjects blend with nature. A striking image of the metallic shield bug feeding on the vegetation. The insect is well focused and contrasted against the plant. The image will be improved if the exposure of the head of the insect is increased, and also if the angle is moved further to the front of the insect. The subject of this image is the sky. The eye is first drawn to the beams of radiating light and then to the clouds. Well-balanced panoramic composition with the foreground and silhouette of the land adding depth and perspective. The Scottish Highland cow is well focused and composed against the background of the farm. The orange colours of the subject become striking in the rich colours of the sun sitting low on the horizon. A touch of intentional oversaturation may have been added to enhance the image. The subject of rocks covered in orange algae is well composed with delayed image creating movement of water. The overcast lighting sets the mood for the mysterious bass strait in the background. A graceful fractal design of ice on a window. This is art sculpted by Mother Nature. The angle of light causing shadowing of the design creates depth. The top left of the corner is slightly overexposed with soft focus. A well-composed image of the ponds, reflecting blue sky and set in alluring colours of nature. This is another example where the light at different times of day may create varied images of the same subject. A different view of the same subject as before, taken when overcast and using the reflection of the pond. The foreground of reeds may distract, however, adds depth to the image. Well-composed image of the waterfall with slight exposure delay creating the water movement. The colours of nature are bright on the left and dark on the right of the image. Taking the image at an angle creates depth. However, a take from the front may exclude the shadows of the hill on the right and further balance the composition. The parrot is appealingly captured, filling the portrait with adequate nose space. The lighting is from the left, highlighting the subject, adding to the depth. The focus appears sharp on the wing feathers and softer on the eye of the parrot. This may have been intentional. Nature again scripts the art by forming, over millennia, the limestone pools deposited from thermal springs. A pleasingly composed image of the Turkish wonder, using foreground and background to create depth. The tree on the left draws the eye and could be cropped to avoid distraction. Daffodil bulbs are nicely contrasted against the dark background. The focus is soft, but that may be intentional. The colour is saturated, deepening the natural yellow of the flowers to orange. Light from the left shapes shadows that create depth to the image. A portrait of nature that presents the grandeur of spring. The foreground dominates the image and may be detracting from the beauty of the pond and its reflections. The landscape image of the tailings dam was well composed and presented under gloomy sky. This creates the mood of chemical entrapment that carries a challenge for environmental contamination. A well-composed and focused image of the bear carving, demonstrating the detail in the art. The pardalotes are captured in their natural environment and well contrasted against the blurred background and surroundings. The focus is soft, but may be intentional. The spiderweb anchor, stretching out from the right, draws the eye away from the subjects and could be erased using a photographic software program. The image of the cormorants is well composed. The focus is soft and appears to be aimed at the body feathers below their eyes. This may be intentional. The birds are well contrasted against the blue water background. What a fascinating image of the common housefly. The colour of the insect is contrasted against the green of the stalk and the blurred green of the background. The focus is slightly soft and does not detail the finer structures, that is, the compounding structure of the thousands of lenses of the eye. However, this may have been purposefully done to achieve an entire image that is not distracted by detail. A thought-provoking image of the child in colour and superimposed on a monochrome surrounding. The colour play accentuates innocence against the harsh environment. This is a good example of breaking the rule for nose space. The wide background behind the child gives perspective to the image and adds to the mystery of what the child is observing. This is the type of abstract image that draws the eye and the mind. The image can be cropped anyway to produce different thoughts. The subject is the background of white and green. The foreground is active and the movement creates the blur. The image works well as it is. However, I would consider a crop from left and right up to the start of the green, isolating the subject without distraction. The flying duck orchid is captured with the wings pointing down. The image is well composed, focused, and isolated with no distraction. The bill pointing up and the wings pointing down creates the image of powering upwards in space. What an emotive image of the aftermath of the devastating fires in 2016. Using colour and contrast, the photographer tells the story of vast and extinctive destruction and the slow return of different flora. The burnt trees stand as silent sentinels of what was. A balanced composition of the spectacular panorama at Devil's Gullet. The depth of view and focused detail of the flora covering the hills stand out, resembling artful tapestry. A beautifully focused and composed landscape. The subject are the hills layered into the distance, creating depth and mood. The dark foreground may be too distracting, and cropping the bottom up to just below where the silhouette meets the lake may increase the impact of the panorama. A spectacular image of the fjord, with the composition including the cold mountain background. The eye is drawn to the red structure standing in luminous green. The image works well as it is. However, the rocks in the foreground may distract from the colourful subject. Cropping up to just under the green strip of grass at the bottom edge of the fjord may further isolate the tableau. Charming portrait of the waterfalls, using delayed exposure and highlighting the colours of nature surrounding the subject. The composition creates the allure of wanting to be there. The long exposure of the rocks directing the flowing water creates an abstract sense of the beauty of nature. The image is well composed. In my opinion, the green tree at the left is not adding to the image, and if cropped out, may remove distraction and enhance the construct of impression. This is a great example of creative photography, using layers and vignette to tell a story. The subject is the coloured splash, superimposed onto icy background. The splash is softly focused, that is probably intentional. A distraction is the black triangle in the upper right area of the image that, in my opinion, does not fit with the curved subject and the background detail. The pathway in the middle leads the eye to the shine of the orange sunrise, the dawn of a beautiful day over a beautiful harbour with beautiful boats. The image creates the yearning to be there in the moment. The panorama of waterfall and nature is taken with exposure that captures the rich colours of nature. The photographer uses slow exposure that fills the full frame with movement. The colourful foreground creates depth and perspective. Well done. Birds survived the sudden extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period of the very successful but frightening reign of dinosaurs. In this dramatic image of a magpie, the eye of the observer is drawn to the perfectly focused and intense look in the eyes of the bird. The animal is captured in flight, with wings down, well contrasted against the blurred green background and exhibiting intentional movement. This is dinosaur in formidable action. A well-timed composition of the softly lit dwelling with background of majestic night sky movement. This image creates a sense of lonely awe of the place we occupy. This is an impressive composition of light that combines human structure with universe. The Space Needle in the middle, with Milky Way in the background, is a statement of the intelligent and conscious life of us, beautifully portrayed in contemporary colour and speaking of place. The following image, Mosque 1, by Leanne Cowan, was inadvertently excluded from the colour entries. The error was not detected until after the results were received, and so Mosque 1 was not judged. The competition team accepts responsibility for the error and sincerely apologises to Leanne. The leafless trees stand as sentinels of the harsh environment. The branches are well contrasted, although the focus is soft, and monochrome adds the mood of desolation. There are hues of brown and orange around the branches and in the landscape flora, and in my opinion, the image is not pure monochrome. The photographer spotted the contrast needed for monochrome regarding the person and the surrounding structures. The focus is soft, with the top of the umbrella and the feet of the person outside of the frame. The subject is the majestic pillared Roman architecture. The photographer demonstrates the grand architecture by angling the shot upwards. These ruins are difficult to capture in monochrome because there are few distracting colours that can be neutralised with monochrome. It is also difficult to contrast the detail of the chiselled engravings of the stone. By angling the shot through the window frames, the photographer captures the mood of winter and cold. The foreground is well contrasted in low-key tones. The background on the right is burnt out, that is highly lit, and distracts from the perspective. A well-composed image of a portion of the ruins. The eye is drawn through the doorway to what lays beyond, well contrasted and focused. The monochrome conception isolates the degeneration of the structures and creates an atmosphere of desolation. The low foreground tones are well contrasted against the high background tones and create depth. The subject is mist and is achieved by contrasting a detailed foreground horizon with misty background, a majestic and thoughtful composition. The image is distinctively contrasted, and the use of lighting creates depth and a thoughtful story. There may be slight over-sharpening with resulting halo formation around the outlines of the hat and fingers of the hand of the subject. The subject is Cradle Mountain nature, and monochrome removes the distracting colours to focus on the creek. The image is well focused, and the eye is drawn to the contrast of the grass trees on the banks. This image speaks volumes. We have all been there. Whether the lens hood rolls off a cliff or is carried away, never to be seen again. Well timed and captured. Another dynamic image of water and power. The water spray is well contrasted. Depth is lost by the blocked out tones of the rocks and fishermen, but this may be intentional. The complexity of industry is distinctively contrasted in this busy image. Well composed, it leads the eye through the elaborate plant, collaborating to produce energy. The bell tower occupies a prominent position and stands as a statement amid the surrounding bush. Well contrasted and focused image. The fleck of cloud in the sky may distract and could be erased. Well composed and clearly focused image of the church. The monochrome attracts the eye to the detail of the architecture. The image is taken from an angle that creates depth and the mood of grace and piety. The image is well composed and focused, using reflections in the water and a low-key tonal range to create an atmosphere of nature in harmony. Well contrasted image of the death lilies. The invasive species is uncontrollable, and this image with black background creates the mood of menace. This slightly low-key tonal image makes use of the light to create the story of the perfect structure of well-maintained industry. A contemporary image that is well composed, focused, and contrasted. Abstraction in monochrome creates powerful mood and message. This is a good example of simple and finite concept that leads the imagination onto infinite paths of conjecture. The small white artifact at the bottom of the image distracts, but may be an intentional inclusion. This is a well-defined image for monocolor. The contrast of light and architecture without human presence creates a mood of quietness and accomplishment. This is a charmingly composed monochrome image full of emotion. The contrast of black background and soft light creates the shadows for depth. Well done. The photographer chose the perfect angle for this dynamic image. The forceful flow from the background leads the eye to the abstraction of the water patterns on the foreground. A powerful image, very well seen in monochrome.